So, welcome back again to Kabbalah Decoded. We are in a series on the idea of meditation, contemplation, and what that means in Kabbalistic context, what it's all about, how it works, who it's for, how to do it, the whole 9 yards, hopefully. So last week we spoke about 5 different levels of soul. And those levels of soul are called, from the bottom up, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yechida. These 5 levels of soul are 5 levels, you could say, of consciousness of godliness, starting from the lowest level of consciousness, which is simply awareness of the person's physical being, rising up to awareness of the emotional powers that one has, and then onto intellectual consciousness, ultimately to 2 levels of consciousness which are not grasped or closed, as it's called, within vessels, within the Sfirot. We'll discuss this soon. The levels of Chaya and Yechida. So again, Nefesh, the consciousness of the body, the physical consciousness. Then there is emotional consciousness, intellectual consciousness, and 2 transcendent levels of consciousness. The highest of which, called Yechida, is ultimate God consciousness. Now, why did we mention this? Because we mentioned last week that there were 5 different approaches to the spirit of holiness, or spiritual awakening, if you want to call it. I suppose in some context people might call it enlightenment, which is a good word, but which has been used, overused. And so I don't really want to use that word. In any event, we said that there were 5 ways in which Ruach HaKodesh, which is spiritual enlightenment, or the spirit of holiness, or divine inspiration, manifest themselves. One of those methods, one of those ways is, the second highest way is the way of the essence of the soul becoming revealed, or the root of the soul becoming revealed to the person. And that is basically what the process of meditation focuses on primarily. There are the other ones I spoke about last week, but we're not going to go into them because they are methods that are not really relevant to us in our current context, and probably not relevant in our generation at all. So, revealing the essence of the soul. Again, we said that the revelation of the soul can come about 5 different levels: Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yechida. These 5 different levels of consciousness. The highest level, again, being Yechida, God consciousness, or unitary consciousness of the oneness of the soul with God in its source. Now, the question that we have to ask ourselves, and that's, I guess, most important to everybody, is how do we achieve that? How do we achieve consciousness on these levels? Well, there are various approaches and methods in which we can achieve these things. Let's just share a screen for a minute, and I will, I'm sure you can see that. We said previously that the, just let me get my spotlight here. We said previously that the level of Nefesh, the lowest level of the soul, corresponds to the Sfira of Malchut. Again, the next level of soul, the next level of divine consciousness is called Ruach. The next one is called Neshama. Chaya, and Yechida. We said last time that Nefesh corresponds to the Sphira of Malchut, and in the person, in the human being, it corresponds to the life force of the body as well as the garments of thought, speech, and action. Ruach is the emotional qualities, and those are corresponding to the 6 Sphirot from Chesed. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. Neshama corresponds to Bina, Chaya to Chochmah, and ultimately the highest level of soul corresponds to Keter, which is the transcendent, the most transcendent aspect of soul, of being. Each of these has its own methods. Each of these levels of thought have their own methods in which to achieve a certain level of holiness, a certain awareness of deeper levels of sanctity, deeper levels of godliness revealed within those particular levels. Now, in the most simple sense, and something that is not really part of meditation as such, but is nevertheless an important aspect to focus on in the beginning, because there is a process. We don't start at the top. You start at the bottom and you work your way up. It's by being compared, meditation and prayer, both of them are compared to a ladder. A ladder has to begin at the bottom. If it doesn't begin at the bottom, if you just start at the top of the ladder, things are not going to work that well. So you can't. There has to be a process. There's a process of cleansing, a process of purification, a process of elevation. So it begins with the level which is not really so much the realm of meditation. This is the aspect of things where the primary goal is to make the garments of the soul, what I call the garments of the soul, thought, speech, and action, to purify them and to elevate them so that they are worthy vessels for godliness. That mostly is through a process of self-control, not so much a process of, it's a process of self-control and a process of following the dictates of the commandments in the Torah. For Jews, the 613 commandments, and for non-Jews, the 7 Noahide laws. The 7 Noahide laws, you can look them up. Chabad.org has a nice article on the 7 Noahide laws. Actually, a few articles on the 7 Noahide laws. In any event, one could say ultimately that the first level of achievement is what you could call proper action. Acting in the proper way, learning how to act in the proper way, in thought and in speech and in action. Obviously, action is easier to control than thought. Speech and action easier to control than thought, but also not so easy, right? Not so easy to control speech. Sometimes difficult to control even action because we become habituated to behaving in a certain way. And modifying our behavior so the behavior exhibits a certain level of holiness, a certain level of sanctity, a certain level of self-transcendence is something that's not easy. As I mentioned on a number of occasions, the best way to go about this is to figure out what the best way is to act and do so. And afterwards, the emotions start to follow actions. In other words, once the actions are in the right place, one acts in the proper way, then other things start to sort of fall in line. In any event, since this is not so much the realm of meditation, I'm not going to focus on it to a tremendous degree. just be aware that it is a stage, even though it's not a stage in meditation, it is a stage in personal development and in becoming a more godly person, a more spiritual and elevated soul. Where does meditation begin? Meditation really begins with the emotional qualities, the 6 emotional qualities of the soul, which, as we know, are called Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. They correspond to Chesed corresponds to the idea of love. I actually have a chart for this that I didn't put up on the, I didn't get prepared beforehand. Yeah, let me just get it up 1 second. Here we go. Yeah. Sefirot and soul powers. I don't know who's drawing on them, but it's clear all drawing there, and don't draw. Okay. Let's see. Disable attendee annotation. There we go. Okay, so the emotional qualities which begin with chesed in the positive sense, the first ones over here correspond to the positive things, and then the negative ones with the negative sign in front of them are, in brackets, are the negative qualities which are found in the animal soul rather than in the godly soul. So again, chesed would be kindness, love. Gvura would be might, awe, fear, a desire for privacy, to set boundaries. The negative side we know as well. Tiferet, compassion, the desire for variety and change. Netzach, perseverance, confidence, trust, external security. Hod, acknowledgement, sincerity, internal certainty, security, internal security. Yesod, influence, empathy, contribution beyond ourselves, and so on. Malchut, humility, significance. But these 6 over here, each of them has numerous types of meditation or numerous subjects of meditation which arouse that particular quality. I'll explain this more as we go on. So the meditation which is going to arouse the aspect of love and kindness in a person is going to be a very different meditation from one that arouses awe, a feeling of awe, A-W-E. Similarly with compassion, with Tiferet. Let me make this a bit bigger in case you can't see it so well. With compassion, Tiferet, that too has its own type of meditation, its own subject of meditation, as do all of the other ones as well. Each one has their own type of meditation. Similarly, if we're going up the ladder, the next sphera up, the types of things that arouse the concept of bina, which is understanding primarily, that is a very analytical type of meditation, analytical meditation. Then there's meditation which arouses the sphera of chokhmah, wisdom, intelligence. The primary type of meditation here is the meditation on nothingness, on the nothingness of the individual, on the self-nullification, the non-existence of ourselves and the world in comparison with true existence. It's relative non-existence because of course we do exist. Okay, and ultimately the meditation which arouses Keter is one that is completely transcendent, and it is where the root of the soul resides. That's what arouses one's faith, delight, will, etc. One's ultimate purpose in life is the meditation over there. Okay, This is just in general. I'm going to speak about these things specifically as we get on in this course. However, we have to understand why this is necessary and what in fact it achieves. What in fact it achieves. Let me just explain another concept which is found in Kabbalah. We have what is called the Or Ein Sof, the infinite divine light, the revelation of God, the revelation of godliness, which is called the Or Ein Sof, the infinite divine light, the infinite light. Surrounding or containing in some way or another, but not completely containing this divine light. This divine light is infinite, but the finite manifestation of that divine light is called the Or HaSfirot, the light of the Sfirot. And the light of the Sfirot is then manifested in the light of the soul, or the light of the souls in the plural, being that the Sfirot, as we discussed before, the various Sfirot, it's just a plain example of the Sfirot without any of the other. The light of the Sfirot, the light which is invested in the Sfirah, is then manifested in the soul as well, generally in the powers of the soul, as we've just explained. So, the Or Ein Sof is undifferentiated, infinite divine light. The Or HaSfirot is differentiated according to the 10 Sfirot, right? The 10 Sfirot. And the Or HaNeshamot is the manifestation of the Or HaSfirot in the soul of the individual. The question is, how do we manifest more of the light of the Sfirot in the souls? In the soul. How do we fill up the soul with a manifestation of divine light, as it is in the Sfirot, and ultimately as it is in Or Ein Sof? So we'll see, therefore, that the Or of the Sfirot, since there are 10 Sfirot, there are 10 general categories of meditation, each according to each arousing one of the Sfirot. Each arousing one of the Sfirot. And by meditating on that particular quality, that particular idea, whatever it is, that manifests greater light in the soul. Light from the Sfirot in the soul. Ultimately, it is possible for the Or Ein Sof itself to be revealed in the soul, or let's say it the other way around, for the soul itself to merge into Or Ein Sof, beyond the Sfirot. It's a possibility. I'll have to explain how that comes about and why it is and what it is exactly. Why does each sphere, so one of the questions over here, would the light of the Or Ein Sof be the light of God which is present in the first day of creation? Yes, that is correct. Why does each sphere have a negative or dark side when it appears that they elevate higher and higher? Like you don't achieve this higher part, you get that lower part. Not necessarily, no. It's just that the same quality in positive could also be found in negative, because a person possesses really two impulses, two sources of motivation. One is the godly soul. The other is what's called the animal soul, right? The animal soul is the soul for self-preservation. And it can be more than that as well, or correctly, less than that, right? Not just self-preservation, but self-aggrandizement and self-indulgence and so on and so forth. The animal soul is filled with animal qualities. In other words, what do we mean? There's nothing wrong with animals, but animals don't have the potential that human beings have. An animal could just be an animal. A cow is never going to sit down on its rear end and look up at the stars and wonder like where everything came from. A cow is only interested in where its next meal is going to come from. And I say that for bulls as well, yes, just in case anyone's getting upset here, right? It's true of bulls, it's true of cows, it's true of goats, it's true of sheep, and it's true of all kinds of animals. There's no animal that really think in an abstract kind of fashion like a human being can, or at least should. Okay, so what is the way in which we get the light of the Sfirot to illuminate the powers of the soul? How do we get the light of the Sfirot, ultimately the light of the Orient Sof, to illuminate the soul? For this, there are meditative techniques, various kinds of techniques. One of the techniques is the standard technique, which is, when I say standard technique, I mean one of the standard techniques in Kabbalah, which is the use of holy divine names. Now, how does this work exactly? If we look back again at the tree of the Sfirot, it's called the tree of the Sfirot, right? If we look at the tree of the Sfirot, because it kind of looks like a tree, there's a root and then there's branches and so on and so forth until you get to the essence, the tip of the tree and so on. Yeah? Anyway, and let's not get into that now, but each of these Sfirot has two aspects to it. There's two aspects to each Sfirah. There's what's called the light of the Sfirah, and there's the vessel of the Sfirah. Now, what does that mean? The light means essentially the energy thereof, right? The energy of the Sfirah and the nature of the Sfirah. So, for example, if we're talking about Chesed, right, the Sfirah of Chesed. And again, this is also in soul powers, it's the same thing. And I'm just explaining it now in terms of Sfirot. The energy of the Sfirah of Chesed, the energy is an energy which seeks to bring others closer and to do actions which result in the closeness of another subject, another person. Doing chesed, kindness and love and so on and so forth. Or, alternatively, it could be love for the Creator, right? Love for God. That's the energy of it. But what is the vessel thereof? The vessel thereof is that it's that particular thing, and it's not another thing. It's chesed, it's kindness, it's love, and it's not awe, and it's not compassion, and it's not something else. It's only that particular thing. Now, when I say only, let me modify that a little bit, because in the world of Tikkun, which is the world that we live in, the world of Tikkun, everything is really intermingled with everything else. Nevertheless, the color, so to speak, of the Sfirah, or the character of the Sfirah, is a character which has in it primarily that concept of chesed. In other words, it manifests primarily as love. Now, everyone who's been a parent knows that sometimes you have to, for example, rebuke your child or even punish your child, and you do it out of love, not out of some frustration or anger or whatever it is. If you love your child, sometimes you know that it's the important thing is to punish that child. Sometimes you have to do that. So we see that there is a concept of something coming from Gvura. Gvura is harshness, severity, etc. Can be an aspect of chesed, but nevertheless, primarily chesed is chesed. Chesed is the concept of love and the concept of giving and kindness and so on and so forth. Even though sometimes there are aspects of other sfirot which are manifested in it, which are simply an expression of chesed in irregular circumstances. Let's put it that way. Now, one of the methodologies of Kabbalah is to use the holy names which are associated with the Sfirot. Each Sfirah is associated with one of the holy names. It's brought in the Midrash and it's explained at length in Kabbalah. The name Kel, for example, is in Chesed. The name Elokim is in Gvura. Hashem Tzvaot in Netzach. Elokim Tzvaot in Hod. Shin Dalad Yud in Yesod. Aleph Dalad Nun Yud in Malchut. So each of the Sfirot has its own association with a holy name. However, the way it is usually explained in Kabbalah is that the name associated with that Sfirah is associated with the vessel of the Sfirah, not with the light of the Sfirah. The light of the Sfirot is all the same light. It's associated with a four-letter name, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Havaya. That's the light of the Sfirot is associated with the name Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. The transcendent, ineffable name which we don't pronounce and we don't generally use. So in meditation, generally, the intention is to use the holy name which enlivens the vessel of the Sfirah, because that name is closest to the light within the Sfirah. The holy name that is used in association with a particular Sfirah is the interface between that Sfirah, the vessel of the Sfirah, and the light of the Sfirah. So in order to elicit light from this Sfirah into our souls, don't forget the power of the souls is in an outer ring. Let me just bring it up again. In the middle is the Or Ein Sof. Then the Or HaSfirot. The Or HaSfirot is all the same name, the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. Let me just explain it again for a second. Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, the Ramak, author of the Paradise, a famous Kabbalistic sefer, he lived around about the same time as the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria. In fact, he passed away just as Rabbi Yitzhak Luria was coming into ascendancy, into his own right as the leader of the Kabbalists that he would eventually become. But Rabbi Moshe Cordovero writes in his work, Pardes Rimonim, as it's called, Pardes Rimonim, the orchard of pomegranates, or pomegranate orchard. So he writes over there that there's an analogy. He gives an analogy. If you take various colored glasses, right? You have a blue glass and a yellow glass and a red glass and so on and so forth. You go to the river and you fill the glass with water. It says it's all the same water, but now the water in the yellow glass looks yellow, the water in the blue glass looks blue, and the red glass looks red. The truth is, if you pour the water out, you'll see that it's all uncolored water. The water itself doesn't get colored by the vessel. But the interface of the water in the vessel and the vessel itself is the sort of the inner part of the vessel itself. Right? That interface would be the other holy names, excluding the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is a name associated with a light. So therefore, many of the Kabbalistic meditations are variations on a theme of using holy names. Using the holy names to interface with the light in the vessel. Using those holy names, which again is the energy of the vessel, in order to interface with the light, with the light that's contained in the vessel. And that elicits the light of the Sfirot into that particular power of the soul. So the person can go into a state of ecstasy through this meditation and he feels his soul being filled with love or with kindness or with whatever it happens to be, whatever the particular quality is that we're talking about. So we'll see that some of the Kabbalistic meditations therefore focus on holy names. There is another branch of this, which is a branch which was promoted primarily by someone named Avraham Abulafia, lived in the 1100s. Very unusual character. Actually, I'm sorry, he lived in the 1100s, not the 1000s, 1100s. And he was a pretty unusual character in many ways, but he has many meditations. He wrote a lot of books on the subject. He also uses holy names, but he uses them in a little bit of a different way. What he does is doesn't use the names associated with the Sfirot themselves, like the other holy names, the names which are not allowed to be erased. In other words, Shem Kel and Shem Elokim and Shem Aleph Daled Nun Yud and Shem Shin Daled Yud, not those names. But what he does is he uses meditations which form, so to speak, a garment for the light of the Sfirot themselves. In other words, not the energy of the vessel, but the garment of the light of the Sfirot themselves. That is the one of those names is called the 72-letter name. The 72-letter name, or Shem Ab. The Shem Ab Sag Ma Ban. So that's another method that he uses. It's primarily his method, and anyone that uses the methods of Rabbi Avraham Abulafia will use that method. So that's one of the ways in which to elicit the light that's in the Sfirot and make it illuminate the soul, and particularly the powers of the soul. There are many other techniques, and we'll discuss another one of them in the next class, which is next week. Are there any questions?